Welcome to the Golden Nugget Podcast. This is Captain C.J. Beckman with the National Guard Association of Utah. In 2022, the DoD announced that they will miss their recruiting target by about 30,000 soldiers, airmen, and sailors. A lot of that with the National Guard. We're here today with Company Grade Officer Table Talks to discuss this issue, what we perceive as some of the causes, impacts, and potentially some of the solutions. So this may turn into a multi-episode discussion as we tackle this really important but very complicated issue. I'm very pleased today to be joined by three other company grade officers. First, we have Jessica Delph, a logistics officer with the Mobile Public Affairs Detachment.
Hello.
And then we have Lieutenant, the junior here on the panel today, Second Lieutenant Zach Redford, a logistics officer with the 118th Transportation.
Hello.
And then we have returning with us Captain Rebecca Doucette, an MI officer or intelligence officer with the Joint Forces Headquarters.
Good afternoon.
All right. So talking a little bit, we've got an article that we've referenced, and you can read this article from the Washington Post. Basically talking about the Pentagon. The title of the article is Pentagon Bedeviled by Recruitment Failures as Solutions Prove Elusive. And this recounts several senior leaders going to Capitol Hill to talk about the issues of recruiting, where the shortfalls were, and then provide some of the what they point out as some of the causes of the recruiting shortfall. But I kind of want to throw it out to everyone here. Why did DoD miss its recruiting goals in 2022? What are some thoughts that you've all seen or experienced, or what do you think the point is or the blame is for this?
I actually have read some recent articles, and while none of them addressed 2022 specifically, the big things that all of them agree on are that there's too many people out there that are just medically ineligible for joining the military. Even when you talk directly to a recruiter here at Utah Guard, he can get 5 interested candidates, but when they go through MEPS, 4 out of the 5 need waivers, and they can't even get those waivers passed through. And then the second biggest thing that came up was simply a lack of awareness of people knowing that the military is out there. And the third would be my perspective is that they're still focusing so much on targeting to the high school group, whereas their realization is slowly coming that they actually need to target people in their mid and late 20s and not just people in their teens and early 20s. And the Marine Corps just came out with an article tying sort of toxic leadership and how they're going to handle that, but also that they're going to recruit more of those middle-age group people who already have some time in their careers and focus on bringing them in at a rank commensurate with their level of experience. Because right now, when you come in, you're an E1, E2, E3. But if we're recruiting or targeting 25-year-olds who've been out in the workforce for 4 or 5 years, they're not going to want to come in to E1, E2 pay. And so I think we need to improve the reputation of the military to kind of gain it back now that all those wars are over. We're in a whole new era with our, great China competition. And we need to be creative about how we target people who are interested in athletics, interested in international diplomacy and different things where the military is going to be involved.
So I think that's interesting is, kind of the idea is what you say awareness, maybe another way that some might say is appeal, that the military has no appeal to, a current generation. And so, I don't know the ages of everyone around here. So I'll look at Zach here as the youngest peer. Your peers. I'm not sure how tied in with you are with your community outside of the military. But what are some of the things that you see kind of from your age group. How old are you?
So I'm 30, actually. So I'm a little bit of a late joiner.
A little bit of a late joiner. Okay.
So I had a civilian career for about 10, 12 years before joining the military. So I kind of fit into that age group that Captain Weir was talking
sorry
about.
Sorry to totally, as a second lieutenant, to totally pigeonhole you as a 20-something.
You were the young kid that knows nothing. But yeah, so I'm still the part of that. But... I can handle that. But I'm part of that group that she spoke about, them starting to target, is that I've had a bit of a career and was able to join in as an officer. And you're right, is that appeal is, I feel like, for a few generations, and you can start seeing that in the blue-collar jobs now, right, that they've been sold on the college degree, C-suite level jobs, that this is where you need to go to have an appealing, beneficial career. That is the only way to go. And so these blue-collar jobs like HVAC or whatever, things that pay really well, and the military are starting to get kind of pigeonholed with those blue-collar jobs where people don't know that there's these really rewarding careers out there where you can have great benefits, great pay, and a lifelong career that brings a lot of, personal gratification, which is one of the big reasons why I joined the military. Is before this, I was selling mats and uniforms for a rental company, and I was like, I see no positives for this in my life. And I thought, hey, the military is something I could be passionate about. And that's not something that's being sold very well to this generation.
So not being sold really well. So I'm trying to think, I don't know, maybe let's go around the room. What motivated you to join?
So I actually like this conversation because I joined later. I was 32 when I joined. And, it was not really something that I thought that I would ever like. And so I think the idea of marketing, one of the reasons why I think we're having a hard time right now is the diversification and the change in the culture. And if I love my job. I love being in the military. But when I was 20-something in college, I would never have thought that. And I just got approached by a recruiter, and he said, hey, you could be an officer. You're athletic, we'll reward you for that, and you will do really well. And I was like, well, that sounds like fun. He's like, we'll send you around the world. You can travel. I was like, that sounds great. So that's why I joined at 32 after I had 2 degrees, gone to grad school, had my civilian career. And I mean, a lot of people don't think I'm the military type quotes, right? I really think that changing that idea of what a military person is will increase that appeal. I mean, and you can kind of see it, and I know that those controversial, like Army recruiting, the animated ones. Have you heard about those?
Yeah, no, I think I know which ones you're talking about. The ones kind of like that. Kind of anybody can belong, or everyone belongs type thing.
All the different stories with all the different backgrounds, and there was a lot of diverse comments about it, and a lot of pushback because that's not the way people want to sometimes, I feel, like see our Army as diversified. But that's one reason why I joined, is because it is becoming that, and there's more opportunity for people like me, and if you can't see me, but I am a short-statured female, a little bit older, but I found my place, and I don't think a lot of the public knows that.
Yeah. That was something that came up in one of the articles I read, and it was really distinctive where you read the information about the recruiting issue, was that it was too woke now. And I even know that the next Congress is going to try to push back on that. But the Marine Corps, I just read, they're realizing that to fight China, which is what we all need to be focusing on as we reach out to those newer and younger enlisted and officers, that the Marine Corps realized we don't want everybody turning over in 4 or 5 years. We want people who are committed to a career and are planning to stay in longer. So they are intentionally going to target that older person who is in there for a career. I joined because I just wanted to play the trumpet. And I thought that was really cool. And that was 21 years ago. And now I better not give my age. But, that was the appeal to me. And then I kind of got sold on the patriotism and the physical fitness, things I'd always been into. and things have worked out. I've had so many opportunities. I've been able to choose my career. I've had many different MOSs along the way. But I am going to disagree with Zach on one thing that he said, because you said something about the attractive pay. Now, all of us here at this table are officers. But when you're enlisted, and if we're targeting that older group that might already be married, might already have a kid or two, and you're talking E4 pay, that's not really great pay. And I firmly believe that something needs to be done about that. And then when you look, I'm even seeing a lot of officers getting out. And while we all feel like, okay, we're getting good pay, good benefits, like I'm going to use the GI Bill and get my PhD. But when you compare it to that, C-suite executive pay, we're nowhere near that.
Yeah, well, I think that I think one of the things that's going against the military now is there has been a series of bad press. I mean, what did was it General Milley that just recently, like, talking about, we saw some things come out about, financial literacy and, like, actually encouraging soldiers to go on food stamps. And, like, it was a news article in the newspaper. We'll have to pull it up, but it was like, yeah, this is something that soldiers should be doing for their financial readiness. And you get a news article that goes out like that, and, like, that doesn't make the military look attractive. Like, no amount of patriotism, I think, can overcome that. But and I'm being a bit facetious because there's obviously some people that patriotism will overcome deficits like that, but that's an uphill climb.
That's a very small minority who are going to overcome. I've got to put my family on food stamps because I chose a life in the military.
Yeah.
And especially now that we're not going to Afghanistan, we're not going to Iraq as frequently as we were. I mean, those opportunities are still there. They're very few. And so what's the sell? What's that hero that you're walking in the door at night if you're unable to put food on the table?
Yeah. And both of you, Jessica and Rebecca, both of you mentioned, kind of this idea of kind of that wokeness that we were talking about. And I think that's also, created a bit of a schism, or some bad press. Because, I don't know if the stats still show out, but the idea that, the majority tend to lean right politically, a lot more conservative, maybe libertarian. I'd actually be really interested to see what those stats actually look like today. But regardless of, people's misunderstanding, and in my perspective, kind of the quote unquote woke agenda came from a well-meaning idea that's just, maybe there's a lot of places where it's been misapplied. And you see a lot of people that talk about, like, diversification and different things like that, and other people interpret that as lowering standards, having different standards. Not everyone's the 6'2", 180-pound, linebacker who can run a 12-minute 2-mile and things like that, and that I think there's a guard that's very difficult for them to accept. But when you have bad press that gets out there, like, how do you overcome that? Just in day-to-day conversation, talking to people about guard experience.
I think it's really hard, especially with how small the military footprint is these days. We're less than 1% of the population. And so if you look at that 6 degrees of separation, how many people know someone who's in the military? They might know someone who got out, but generally speaking, and this is where I think we need to focus our recruiting in a couple ways, is either getting those people who got out back in and helping them show them something positive, show them a good experience. Also, keeping track of why people get out. Because right now, we're not doing that. The Navy's starting to talk about it. The Marines are starting to talk about it. I don't see the Coast Guard has no issue with recruiting. It's just the 4 main branches of service. Army's having the biggest issue, and it is that reputation. So we all have a job to spread that word and to correct that misinformation. I know my grandson is like, I don't want to get in. Now, I think his issue, it's not the education benefits, because those are very attractive, but it's the generation that doesn't want to be told what to do. They want that freedom and flexibility, and they want that quick paycheck that they have control over, not a salary that they can't, get overtime or whatnot. And so this whole generational change is something that also needs to be looked at.
And I think you make a really good point. The generation, and I was actually just reading an article today about remote work and how that has been changed. And even when the offices are pushing still for people to come back to the office, there is this huge pushback against it. And it's because a lot of people now, the whole culture has shifted into a work-life balance where people are prioritizing their families and their work-life balance. And the military doesn't really provide that. Even when you have, that 360 health thing that we're pushing now, right? Sleep and rest and work.
Oh, the whole fitness.
The whole fitness, right? We don't actually do that. So I think a lot of people push against that idea more and more with this whole cultural shift of what a job is in general.
Are you guys tracking the change with basic training?
No.
Some of the change. So the shark, they got rid of the shark attack.
Oh yeah. Those kinds of changes.
Yeah, those kinds of changes.
You don't have to pass a PT test to.
Yeah, and there's like a 3-week thing now where if you have issues passing, you can go and you do this. You do a little bit of a train up before you go to basic training to kind of get instilled that physical fitness mentality.
It's a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
And I think those of us who have always found it easy, and I'll count myself in that group, physical fitness is a lifestyle that was inculcated in me since elementary school. Joining a local sports team, being on all school teams, soccer and, basketball and squash and running and everything like that. But that makes me a rare bird in that instance. And I think we also need to recruit 2 people who are physically fit. And I think it's great if they're spending more time, because until it becomes a lifestyle change, it's going to be hard to maintain that.
Yeah, no, I think that's what they're trying to get at with that. But then it's the mindset thing. So, how do you recruit that mindset that is more about, kind of their experiences, and if they don't get joy in their work, they don't stick around. Like those types of mindsets, and then a more diverse workforce that, fitness isn't the thing, but maybe there's something else that is. And how do you do that? How do you balance that broad of a recruiting strategy with such a diverse generation as we're seeing right now?
I think Sergeant Major Anderson, when he initiated the Crossroads here a few years ago, I think he started touching on some of those things that we've made changes of that saw improved retention. And we could take those same things, take those stories out to the public.
Just real quick for those that may not understand or know about this, will you explain kind of a little bit what the Warrior Crossroads was?
So the Warrior Crossroads was, you have someone in your unit who's about to get out, and if they're 3 to 6 months out, instead of coming to drill once a quarter, there's a Warrior Crossroads. So they go to that drill, and at that drill, just like what you're talking about, that diversity. Maybe you've been stuck in logistics the whole time, or you've been stuck in admin or whatever MOS, and you're tired of it and you want to try something else. Because I know mechanics who've gone and learned Pashto. I know, people who were armors, and they went into public affairs. Because at some point we all kind of change and grow and want new things. And so Warrior Crossroads showed you, if you're pigeonholed into your artillery unit or your MI unit, hey, there's other units here in the Utah Guard where, that you can join. And I think on the recruiting side, you need to show that there's a broad array and really try to tie people to things they're interested in, and not just pigeonhole them because of an ASVAB score, and really focus more on that development. And I think that, however, holistic health and fitness, we need to actually put more money into it and get us all physically fit, and help it be a lifestyle change, not just an article that comes out in the Garb magazine once a month, but more organizational stuff. And then we can go out and be recruiters. An idea I have is, a Utah Guard running team. If we went out and we had a team of 12 folks who showed up at all the local road races and had a booth out there, maybe we can help get that athletically minded folks who might be interested, and they just might be unaware of the opportunities out there.
So I want to kind of go back, talked a little bit about it. Why do we think, or from your experience, those that you've talked to, peers that you have, people are getting out?
I think one thing, and you kind of hit on it earlier, is with careers nowadays, the mindset is every 2 to 3 years, people are looking for something different. They're looking for a change, looking to move on, find the next paycheck. And with that, they find exponential growth in their pay when they're jumping from job to job. You can see all kinds of research on it. Military doesn't offer that flexibility in a lot of ways.
Would that even be possible?
It would be tough in the military.
Not the exponential pay part.
Not exponential.
No, as I say, government just in general can't offer that, right?
Mm-hmm. But another thing is she spoke about it with Warrior Crossroads, is the flexibility in potentially changing of career types in the military. It's not super flexible until, we're about to lose you. How about let's throw you a bone and you could try something different? Whereas there might be more potential to allow people to, I joined the military with this MOS when I was 18 and I had no idea what I was doing. Somebody said 88 Mike, I joined up and I realized I hate driving trucks. And how much flexibility is there for him to jump over and to do something different, and how, I don't know what that looks like.
What's kept me in, I joined as a trumpet player. That's all I wanted to do. Then I met a toxic leader. And what did I do? I became a journalist. And the military trained me in everything A to Z in journalism. And then I got a little bit bored with that, 3 years. And I said, they'll pay me to go learn Arabic. That sounds great. And I was able to chart my own career. And I don't think enough people realize that. Now, as officers, it is different, but we get different pay and there's different responsibilities. And so that's also understandable. But selling that message is important.
I think that when I was a commander for a company, this was the big issue, right? Where was that balance? Because you want to progress the individual, right? EPS packets come out, they have movement to another company. So that hurts your personal company retention. But it encourages, and I think it just, I had some really happy people leaving my company because they got to finally go somewhere, do something new. Right. And so that's the fight I see as a leader, right? How do you keep your individual retention from your company while promoting the needs of the individual, especially during something like COVID, because we weren't able to send people to school. And so I saw that there was a lot of disgruntled soldiers because they weren't able to move to new places or promote because they didn't have the schooling. And I really think that COVID kind of hurt us that way. I'm hoping that now that we're able to get to more schools and there's some more movement, soldiers will be able to explore more MOSs and do have more movement. But I know over the last 2 years when there was no schools, it's pretty stagnant and people were a little discouraged.
And back to your original question, CJ, about why people get out. I think one of the reasons is that they can't move. Mm-hmm. And before I had really experienced toxic leadership here in Utah, I met people who were saying, hey, I want to move from this unit to this unit, but my company commander, my battalion S3, the battalion AO, the battalion commander, they won't let me move. So what ends up happening? They get out. And those are really good soldiers. So I'm with Jessica in that if that's what they want to do, we as officers owe them our support to help them in their career, to help them broaden, because it helps the military as a whole. And it's very hard as a leader to have that vision that this could actually help the military. One team, one fight, big organization, not necessarily thinking of your own little piece of the pie. And if they see a leader doing something that maybe doesn't benefit the leader, us as a company commander, you lose a soldier, okay, your unit just went from 80 to 79 or whatnot. But if that keeps someone in the military, to me, that's a win, and that's more important. And I think we need to share that message of like bigger vision when it comes to soldier movement and
so if I can, and then Zach, with what you've got, the thought that I'd always had is kind of that whole thing of being able to own your career. And I think it encapsulates what you're both saying, is that idea that a soldier might feel stuck and then feel like, I've seen it before where, hey, I don't even want to go explore, because if I explore and it gets back to my home unit, now all of a sudden I'm disloyal here, and now I'm blackballed here. So I'm only going to look if I know I have some sort of guarantees. And so it's, for me, it's communication and visibility. And I know this is like something potentially really difficult, but I think at the state level, if the Guard could figure out something along the lines of what active duty has with HRC, and even an internal state level tour of duty type website, where you could go on and you could see all of the vacancies in the state of Utah, and basically just goes, I want to go here, and the soldier can initiate it. And once it's initiated, then it's up at a higher level, and you don't have gatekeepers and things like that. But I think there is, kind of to a broader point, one of the issues we have with recruiting, or one of the issues contributing to recruiting, is there are a lot of people that just aren't having a good experience in the military. And as long as they're not having a good experience, they're not sharing good experiences with their neighbors, with their family, with their friends. And I think that trickles out and down. So I think one of the first things we have to do is figure out how to take better care of those that we have. And I think where you start, tell me if I'm wrong, beards. You start with beards.
If I could grow one, I'd be on your side there.
So Zach, and then Rebecca will come back to you.
So I guess it's going back a step there, but as a commander, I can see it being kind of nerve-wracking to allow people to kind of wander and check out what else is out there. But then it kind of comes back on you as a leadership to create a culture in which you're inviting others to backfill. So like when I was being recruited, I was told about the open slots of like you could go here, 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 and here. And one of them was the 118th Transportation Co. And my commander there at the time, Captain Muramoto, like she created a culture there that my recruiter even knew about out of recruiting. She's like, that's a great unit. Everyone who's there loves it. You really want to go there. And I did, and I love it. So it's on us as leaders to create an environment where, yeah, I'm making it perfectly acceptable for my people to leave, but I'm also making it inviting for others to come in and backfill.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's how I got people who wanted to join Delta Company. It was just the fun atmosphere that my senior NCOs and the junior officers, like, we just created a culture of fun. And even during telework, teledrill, we played little games and, made PT a lot more enjoyable. And those are the stories that get out. So we had somebody who moved up to Washington State to start dental school. He still comes down and drills because it's such a great company. And going back to the articles I read, the Navy and the Marine Corps are starting to look at that toxic leadership. You've heard me mention it a couple times, and yes, I have personal experience. I think when you have 21 years and it's inevitable, you're going to run into it, maybe once every 5, 10 years, something like that. That is one of those things that gets people out, in addition to, being limited in your options. And it goes back to what you said about your neighbors, your family, your friends, if you're experiencing that. So one of the things that we took away, which I believe that we need to bring back in the Guard, is that 360-degree review. But we need to change it, and that's what the Marine Corps is doing. It's not just you pick the people who are going to give you a 360-degree review. You pick your 2 enlisted, and your 2 warrants, and your 2 officers. It's more like the DEOCS, that survey, like the climate survey. It's open to everybody that you've worked with that provides that feedback, especially for leaders, because it's so important. You're there over 100 people, and as you go up in rank, we're going to be over 200 people, 400 people, 1,000 people. And if you have a toxic leader in that level of organization, you're going to see high turnover. And right now, the Guard isn't looking at it. The Army isn't looking at it. But the Navy and Marine Corps are looking at it because they're aware of the problem. So
And I don't know if I agree that it's not something that the Army is looking at. I think what we've seen in Fort Hood, that they definitely are looking at it, and it definitely is a concern. And I hear a lot of, this is probably the worst way to say this, but there's a lot of platitudes towards it, about, the importance of being inclusive, taking care of soldiers. Suicide obviously is something of very high concern. I don't know if it's something that people know how to.
It's not deliberate training. I will agree with you. I've heard those platitudes.
Yeah.
And you hear, but a 4-star general isn't going to change the mind of an E6 who says, I'm getting out and I'm sick of it. And then they're going to go spread a bad word.
Yeah.
So we're all growing up in the organization. We're about to be, some of us like field grade officers and whatnot, but we need to just really emphasize that positive climate to get those positive stories out. But on a organizational level, they need to focus on deliberately evaluating us, all of us, at all levels, starting at the platoon leader level, and then deliberate training to learn self-awareness and emotional intelligence. Because without those things, and that toxic leader is going to increase the rate of turnover. And if they're not aware that they're toxic, or they're ignorant, they don't listen, they're just going to turn away more and more people. But then we can go to COVID too and talk about that.
We'll maybe save that for next time, because I think this idea of talking about leadership, and obviously we're all company grade officers here, so leadership and how we perform as leaders obviously can contribute quite a bit, and to your point, toxic leadership or counterproductive leadership, both probably have a an outsized impact on people's decision to get out or at least explore other options. Definitely doesn't help anybody stay in. But I like your idea, talking about. I loved the multi-source feedback, the MSAF that you used to have to do with your evaluations. The problem was getting people to do it, right? To actually provide the feedback. There was actually a really interesting book I just recently read called No Rules, which is the story of Netflix and innovation. And they actually talked about this. And we just recently did a climate survey, actually just recently did a couple of them. And one thing I actually think I don't like about those anymore is that they're anonymous. But I see everyone's got the point of well, no, it needs to be anonymous or else you get good feedback. And I think what I'm starting to see is you get feedback, but you get the most angry feedback. Right? You get put on blast, but there's really nothing productive.
Get the internet troll effect.
Yeah.
Almost to an extent, right? It's just this person's a piece of dirt, you should get out of here. You're a horrible leader. Get out. That type of stuff. The company grade officer committee at the national level actually did this, and maybe next time we'll actually bring that in and maybe analyze some of the feedback from that. But it was they were putting generals on blast. This person is a horrible leader, and while it might be one of those things, one of the things that I know the military and government in general does really well is, quote unquote, we'll call it witch hunts, right? Mm-hmm. You see a problem that's that's I can just crush that problem right now. There's a lot of incentive to do that, right? If I find a toxic leader and I crush them and I get them out, now I'm doing a good job. But you're just pruning the fruit of a poison tree, right? It's kind of to give it that analogy of where in No Rules, it talks about if I have to put my name on it, one, my criticism is going to be pretty spot on. And now I'm actually responsible in having a conversation with you about it and leaving myself open to a conversation. But that there's kind of this aversion to doing a survey like that.
Well, one thing that we did, I got great advice when I was a company command from my CSM. And he said, what you should do is you should have a town hall meeting with your company once a quarter at least. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where you get that face-to-face conversation with people where, you know what they're saying to you that it's not anonymous, right? And then you can have that time to talk with them and kind of pull it out. We, as a company commander, turned out there was a huge miscommunication, and my whole company thought something that wasn't actually the way it was, and they were all upset about it. If I had not sat down and had that conversation, me and my first sergeant with them, it would have just continued that way. And, I don't think that it would have come through in the climate surveys. So, the climate surveys, I agree, like, they're not very productive for me as a leader, but sitting down with them face to face, one-on-one, saying, let's talk about this. I honestly found that to be much more helpful. So I think communication, like you said, is a really important part of, and not only that, but then they feel like they're part of it. When they have buy-in, when your soldiers have buy-in and direct buy-in with your conversations, just like you were saying with the posting out the slots, right? When they have buy-in to their career, when they have buy-in to what's going on, when they have buy-in to the conversations, I think they're a lot more likely to want to be a part of the organization.
Well, I think even just to add on to that, ownership of the mission, right?
Right. And I think that we can bring it full circle with what Jessica just said, is generationally, but also humanly, we want to be treated like people. The only danger I see with your advice on a town hall, an open forum, is there are a lot of people who see that rank disparity and they're just plain afraid. But if we as leaders start out as second lieutenants and we're working our way up, or you start out as an NCO in any kind of leadership, if you treat those below you as people, you still can maintain your firm leadership styles. You can still maintain your expectations, which is important. But if you treat them like people, they're more likely to speak up at the town hall. So there's a danger depending on the type of leader you are. Because certain leaders, that quash that toxic leader, you can have a town hall and they can ask a bunch of questions and you can give them honest feedback, and all they're going to do is disagree with everything you say. So
you see that format of like even in an AAR, it's like, well, I didn't like this.
Well, this is why we had to do it that way. It's like, no,
right.
Just listen to the feedback.
They're not listening. And so it's imperative that we on the lower level really inculcate this among our peers, among our NCOs, to treat people like people. We lead by example. Again, expectations is still there. You can have a firm discussion, but you need to make it opening and welcoming, inviting for people to have a frank discussion.
I had no problem with them telling me how angry they were at me. They're like, this is the issue. So, we had a good discussion, and I found it more like educational too. So they would tell me what they were frustrated with, and I'd be like, oh, okay, well, this is how I'm seeing it. What do you think about that? It was a really nice back and forth. And even if, part of the issue is that you're not going to agree with everything they say, of course. As the commander, that is what you have to do. They don't see it up here, right? But at least they understand that you're having that discussion with them. Even if it's not like, well, I'm going to bend to everything, because of course you're not.
And that whole entire reputation of seeing people like people, if we can get that message out to those who are aware of the military's existence and start to change the image, that reputation, that's going to help bring more people in the door.
So I was just kind of thinking about that point as well, as the fear of retribution. I know they speak about it a lot, about there's no retribution for actions or the words that you say, whatever. But in those town hall meetings, how do you change that feeling of I don't want to speak up because I don't want to get squashed or have my captain not like me, or somebody pass me over for a promotion because they don't like me, or something subtle in the background? Because we know we say that a lot, that no retribution for things, but there's still a fear there. Sure. How do you as a leader get rid of that feeling and make them feel open to have an effective town hall meeting?
I think kind of, and Jessica, you kind of hit on this a little bit, is one, that trust has to be there, mm-hmm. right? And I think part of it is, showing early and quickly that you are a leader that is willing to acknowledge, accept, and publicly, beg forgiveness to an extent for your mistakes. So like if you're the first one to admit your faults to your subordinates, and I know there are some people now that'll hear that and kind of just completely claw their ears out of this idea. No, leaders don't admit faults. That's,
good leaders do.
I think there's an old guard.
I agree.
There is an old guard thinking that is kind of like that. But I think now one of the things is being a generation that with leaders that can accept faults and say, hey, this is where I need help.
And then taking action. I think that's the next step, is not just admitting fault, but showing your soldiers that you are taking action on that item. This is where I was falling short, and they actually see you do something about it rather than just saying, oh yeah, that's my bad, and then continuing to do the same toxic or terrible or bad thing. Showing action based on what they've said.
Yeah. So now the question is solutions. And I think maybe we'll save that for next time of how would we go about trying to recruit a new generation, and just really kind of brainstorm like what would need to change policy wise, what would need to change, how the Guard operates, what kind of opportunities are out there, like how would we design a National Guard and a National Guard recruiting strategy that would be the most effective. So we'll save that for next time. Again, thank you all for listening. And if you would like to be a part of this podcast, please send an email to ngautmedia@gmail.com. Again, ngautmedia.com. Thank you to our company grade officers, Jessica, Zach, Rebecca, for joining us, and we'll see you all next time.